Okay guys, hello, I'm Grumpyoldman. So, why this tiny island has more people than Russia? Well, I know they're talking about the island of Java, which I happen to live on. So, I've got a bit of an insight into this. So, let's get into the video and see what they have to say.
This is Java. It's an island located in Southeast Asia that's a part of the Indonesian archipelago, and it's only the 5th largest island of Indonesia, the country.
22,000
islands are larger than Java.
22,000 islands in
has
Indonesia.
Tens of millions more people than all 4 of those other islands combined.
Most populated island in the world.
Java is only the 13th largest island worldwide, but with its enormous population exceeding 148 million people, Java is also by far the world's most heavily populated island, dramatically beating out all 12 of those bigger islands in front of it, like Honshu in Japan, that even includes Tokyo, Earth's biggest city, and Great Britain in the United Kingdom. But what's perhaps the most insane fact to try and wrap your mind around is that Java, which is only the world's 13th largest island, has a higher population than Russia, the world's largest country. Java has 148 million people, while Russia has only 146 million people. And this is despite the fact that Java is approximately 123 times smaller than Russia is in terms of land. To put it another way, Java is located very close by to Australia, an entire continent in its own right, and yet Java has well over 5.5 times the entire Australian population. If it were its own independent country, this medium-sized island all on its own would be the world's 9th most populous.
I know
and
that.
Because it's so small,
I drive in that.
makes Java one of the most densely populated places on the planet. The biggest city on the island and the capital of Indonesia for now, Jakarta, contains the 2nd highest metropolitan population of any city in the world.
32
at over
million
33 million
33
people,
now.
barely behind the number 1 spot of Tokyo over on the world's 2nd most populated island. All of this adds together to beg one of the biggest and most fascinating questions
you don't see very
of modern
many foreign
21st
people.
century human civilization. At least in
It's
my
actually
opinion.
rare to
Why
see
and
a foreigner.
how does this relatively small island have so many
Everybody
freaking
moves
people
there,
on
but
it?
we'll see what they say.
There are many explanations, but
I
let's
know
begin
that.
first with what is essentially
That's
both
Serdaman.
Java and
That's
Indonesia's
the main road in
greatest
Jakarta.
civilizational strength and also greatest weakness: volcanoes. You see, Indonesia is by far the most volcanically active country in the world, with
top of a
74
volcano.
different volcanoes that have been recently active over the past 200 years, and with over 1,000 cumulative eruptions happening within historical times. The next 2 most volcanically active countries in the world, the United States and Japan, each have had only 63 and 62 active volcanoes over the past 2 centuries.
They just
in
pop out of
comparison.
everywhere.
And in Indonesia's case, many of these 74 active volcanoes have proven to be among the deadliest and most destructive ones in all of human history. The eruptions of Mount Sanalus way back in 1257 and Mount Tambora a bit more recently in 1815 are each believed to be the 2 most powerful volcanic eruptions seen anywhere on our planet since the birth of Christ.
What about Krakatoa?
The latter 1815 eruption of Tambora was so violent, it resulted in the deaths of tens to hundreds of thousands of people worldwide, and it ejected so much material into the atmosphere, it generated this 2nd coldest year ever seen on record since the 1400s. Then, in 1883, this volcano called Krakatoa exploded with such ferocity, it is believed to have produced the loudest sound to have ever happened in human history.
Here,
nearly 5,000 kilometers away in the island of Rodriguez,
really good place
near
to go on holiday
Madagascar,
if you want to know.
across the entire Indian Ocean. More than 36,000 people were directly killed in the immediate aftermath of Krakatoa's eruption and the ensuing tsunamis that it caused. Of the 74 active volcanoes that can be found across Indonesia today, 45 of them can be found across just the island of Java alone. in a continuous chain spanning the entire island's length. These volcanoes include ones like Mount Merapi, the most active volcano in the entire Indonesian archipelago that usually erupts around every 2 to 6 years, and has been doing that fairly commonly for around the past 2,000 years.
This isn't including
Recently,
Bali's
it erupted in
one either.
1994 and again in 2006, and then again in 2010. And each time this volcano erupts today is pretty bad, because one of Java's biggest cities is basically located directly next door to it, right here. Yogyakarta, population
Yogyakarta, not Yogyakarta, or Yogyakarta.
Major city is only
Yogyakarta, mate, not
28 kilometers
Yogyakarta.
away
At least
from one of the
learn
most
what it's
active
called.
volcanoes on planet
I went
Earth.
there on my honeymoon.
And many thousands of people literally live within satellite villages that extend right up the volcano slope itself.
It is
This
beautiful,
is
though.
why the 1930 eruption of Merapi ended up killing more than 1,300 people. And why the most recent 2010 eruption sadly claimed the lives of another 353 people. Over thousands of years, all of these volcanoes across Indonesia have killed hundreds of thousands of people throughout their explosive histories. And that might
And if
make
you
it
think,
seem
oh my
like a
God, it's
pretty
just them on the other
unattractive
side.
place to
I
live
live
and
here.
settle a civilization around.
They're nice
But
people.
alongside all of the death and
They don't deserve
destruction,
it.
the volcanoes also bring life and
it's
opportunities. All of these volcanoes exist here because of what's going on just beneath the surface. It is precisely here, far beneath the island's surface, that the Indo-Australian tectonic plate borders the Sunda plate, and is currently subducting beneath it. This subduction of the Indo-Australian plate's crust beneath the Sunda plate generates magma and forces it to rise up to the surface, which is the geologic process that creates volcanoes. You can easily notice that the boundary of these plates here is effectively an identical match with the arc of volcanoes across the islands of Sumatra, Java, and the many lesser islands extending further to the east. Each of the islands across
Ring
this
of
arc,
Fire, right?
including Java, have been completely born out of this ancient and violent volcanic process.
What they haven't shown you is
Their
if you
lands
go
having
along Java
steadily
and
risen
fly
up
past it,
above
it looks
the
like
ocean from the
dragon's teeth
continuous
just popping up
accumulation
along
of
Java.
ash and sediment built
incredible.
up over millions of years worth of constant volcanic eruptions. And while living alongside these volcanoes today presents acutely obvious dangers and
Why
risks,
are they
it
showing
also
things
provides
like this?
incredible civilizational benefits
SBY
as well.
is
Whenever they
an
erupt,
ex-president.
volcanoes spit out enormous quantities of minerals from deep within the earth in the form of ash. After an eruption, this mineral-rich ash will eventually blanket and settle across the nearby area to the volcano, and deposit those minerals into the soil. This process naturally makes the soil incredibly fertile and productive for agriculture, and with the many volcanoes of Java erupting basically all the time, they essentially continually resupply the island's soil
such a
with
green island,
crucial
I have to
minerals
say.
that act as incredibly
Greenest
potent
place I've
and
ever
natural
seen.
fertilizer.
It's amazing.
This is crucial because the process of planting seeds and harvesting crops
he's wearing a
naturally
jacket,
uses up
and
the
it's
available
32
soil because
centigrade
the
there.
minerals within the soil get
And he's wearing a
converted
jacket.
into edible plants.
Think
If the
about
soil
that.
isn't frequently replaced with newer
Imagine
minerals,
going to the beach
soil gets
at 32
used up and
centigrade
farming
and
grows
wearing a
more
jacket.
difficult over time. This is exactly why, historically, every early agricultural civilization first popped up around river valleys in the Nile, the Tigris-Euphrates, the Indus-Ganges, and the Yellow-Yangtze, because these rivers would periodically flood into their adjacent floodplains and deposit minerals from their mountainous sources that would continuously make the soils there suitable for farming. Volcanoes basically work the same kind of way, continuously generating new opportunities in life through brief but awesome periods of natural destruction.
Yes, sir, we do one-day turnarounds. That's because we use templates.
Before the advent of industrial fertilizers in the 19th century, nearly all heavy farming and agriculture took place in high-risk, high-reward locations in either floodplains adjacent to rivers, or in the cases of places like Indonesia, Japan, or Pompeii in southern Italy,
drive along and you
volcanic
see
soil
plastic sheets on the
adjacent
floor
to
with all the
active
rice on it,
volcanoes.
drying
And
out.
thus, with an abundant supply of very rich soil that is almost continuously refertilized with minerals by the many active volcanoes sprouting up from the subduction of the
Look, Bland,
Indo-Australian Australian plate
working that
beneath
hard
the
all your
Sunda
life for that
plate,
little amount of
Java
money.
has always naturally been one of the most ideal locations in the world to produce a ton of food that can feed a ton of people, long before the invention of industrial fertilizer was
There's your
ever
plastic
thought
sheets.
of. But rich soil is only a small
he's a rich
part
farmer.
of the overall explanation.
He's got a Japanese
Java
ox.
has many other geographic advantages towards food production as well. For one thing, the subduction of the Indo-Australian plate beneath the Sunda plate that gave birth to Indonesia's string of volcanoes here placed the islands they formed directly within the tropics, very near to the equator, a region of the world that remains
Always
almost
hot.
permanently warm
All
all
seasons.
throughout the entire year, with little,
Hot,
if any,
really
seasonal
hot.
variation. And further, the
really
island's
wet,
location
and all
in
hot.
between the larger continental landmasses of Asia in the north and Australia in the south directly exposes them to the seasonal patterns of rainfall brought about by the regional monsoon winds.
Yeah.
Therefore, pretty much all of
seasonal
Indonesia's
time at the
islands
moment.
retain warm temperatures throughout the
It's
entire year
really,
and receive
really
heavy
wet.
amounts of rainfall throughout the entire year as well.
Yeah.
And Java is no exception. Overall, these factors converge to mean that Java not only has rich and fertile volcanic soil, but also a large, constant supply of fresh water through heavy rainfall and
As I say,
constantly
look
warm
how green it
temperatures
is.
all year round.
It's so
The three
green.
perfect conditions required for massive food production through agriculture, and specifically rice production, which is the true source of Java's incredible population size. You see, rice contains many advantages for a
they don't
growth-based
say it, but it's
civilization
also
that other
tobacco.
staple food crops do not, primarily because it contains a vastly higher concentration of energy. 1 acre of rice crops on a farm is capable of producing 11 million calories, compared to a measly 4 million calories for the same acre if its land were allocated instead to wheat. Therefore, 1 acre of
everybody
rice
eats
can
rice
provide
now.
nearly the same
Everybody.
amount of calories for a population as 3 acres of wheat can. And civilizations that grow rice can therefore sustain higher amounts of people on less available land than civilizations that grow wheat. But not everyone can just switch over to growing rice, because in order to successfully grow rice in
You
any
gotta have
kind
the
of
water.
large quantity, you need 4 vital things: warm temperatures, a ton of water, fertile soils, and a large
that's why they
pool
build the
of
paddies.
available labor. When using traditional methods of agriculture, like your own bare hands, rice is considered the absolute most labor-intensive of all staple crops to harvest. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, 1 acre of rice takes approximately 198 to 395 man-hours to harvest by hand without the use of any industrialized machines, compared to only 23 hours per acre of wheat. This means that under traditional pre-industrial methods, rice naturally requires a significantly
see the
larger
plastic that I
labor
told
pool
you
of
about?
workers to
Look,
harvest
all the rice
than
goes
wheat
in there and they
does,
dry it out.
which naturally encourages larger populations
drive down the
and
road and
families
they'll be in the
of
front of
farmers,
people's houses.
which is fine because rice can sustain nearly 3 times as many people per acre as wheat can. Ultimately, you can quickly see how rice farming naturally encourages this sort of feedback loop, where the more acres are dedicated to growing it, the more people it can feed, and the more people it
And
requires
it
for
can be
labor
grown
to
on things
continue
like mountains,
harvesting
etc.
it. And Java is one of the
So there's
greatest
more places
locations
you
in
can
the
grow it
entire
than other
world
places.
for the specific task of growing rice. Because of rice's harvesting season, it only takes roughly 120 days from the planting of a rice seed to the harvesting of a fully grown rice crop.
But they
And
haven't
since
said about
Java has
chili as
fertile
well.
soils,
They sell
warm
so many,
temperatures,
grow so many chilies
massive
here, and it's
rainfall,
more expensive
and a
per
big
kilo than
population
beef
of
is.
available labor all throughout the year, every year, the Javanese have been capable of producing 3 crops of rice nearly every year for generations. And this is how the island is capable of supporting a truly massive number of people for its relatively small size. Not many other places in the world possess anywhere near Java's insane amounts of buffs towards food production. While substantially larger, both the islands of Borneo and New Guinea within the same Indonesian archipelago may get similar amounts of rainfall and high temperatures throughout the year as Java, but unlike Java, neither Borneo nor New Guinea contain even a single active volcano. Ordinarily, this would mean that with high amounts of rainfall over millennia, these islands' soils would be getting eroded and weathered away for a very long time. But Borneo and New Guinea soil are each normally protected from this by their dense and lush coverage of rainforests.
Always wanted
in
to
the
go to
sense that
Borneo.
when plants die, they rapidly decompose and replenish the soils with their nutrients, enabling new plants to grow up in their place. But when humans come in and clear out the rainforests of all their plants to use the underlying land and
wash
soil
away.
as a farm, that natural cycle of the forest obviously ends up getting broken. And without any volcanoes or significant floodplains present, the soils have no other natural mechanism to replenish their nutrients from the constant rainfall-induced erosion. And that means farming will quickly deplenish the soils. And that is the primary reason why Borneo and New Guinea, despite being a lot larger than Java and being in a geographically similar location, cannot possibly sustain as large of a population.
There is other reasons why the population is so
historically,
great.
large-scale agriculture on each of them has pretty much been impossible.
Because everybody
It's no
from
surprise
here
then
and
that
here
today,
and here
Java alone
moved to
produces
here
about
to go to
56%
Jakarta for work.
of all of Indonesia's rice and contains more than half of Indonesia's entire population, despite
'cause they
making
all
up
come
less
to-
than
a lot of them come
7%
to
of
the major cities
Indonesia's
for
total
work.
land area. As Indonesian
'Cause the average
civilization and
wage is a
culture
lot
began
more.
increasingly centralizing around Java and the capital city of Jakarta over time, because of all these natural agricultural benefits,
Not just that,
it began attracting even more people from across all of the other islands in the archipelago and, indeed, from the rest of the world for economic, cultural, and societal reasons as well. People always travel to wherever they perceive there is greater opportunity. And as Jakarta and Java increasingly became the political and economic center of the archipelago throughout history, more and more people continued coming to it from elsewhere. As technology and agricultural practices improved in the later 19th and 20th centuries, famines decreased, diseases were reduced, industrialized agricultural practices and machines were added to the already crazy natural food growing buffs, and the population of the island consequently skyrocketed. For most of human history, it was pretty much always the Japanese island of Honshu that was humanity's most populous island for a variety of very similar factors to Java. But by the 1980s, Java finally surpassed it for the title of Earth's most populous island, and the gap between them has only widened ever since then. Today, Java contains tens of millions of more people than Honshu does. And unlike Japan, the tremendous growth rate on Java doesn't appear to be stopping anytime soon. Honshu and Japan's population at large peaked back in 2008, and has actually been steadily decreasing every single year since then. Meanwhile, Java still recorded an impressive 11% growth rate during the decade between 2010 and 2020, which is half of the growth rate the island experienced back in the 1960s and 70s, but still impressive. Even though the growth rate on Java is steadily slowing down, it's still large by developed nation standards.
This is Sunday morning, right? You're allowed to cycle. That no cars are allowed here, yeah?
This implies that
Really
it's
cool.
almost certain
car-free
Java
day.
will
Sunday
remain
mornings in
humanity's
Jakarta.
most populated island for a very, very long
It's so hard to drive. It's these
Indonesia
bikes
is
that go in
by
between the
far
cars. It's the
largest
hardest.
country in Southeast Asia and has the 4th largest population in the world after the United States. The history of these islands are among the most fascinating in the world, and they have always played a critical role in global geopolitics going back centuries. These were the islands that Christopher Columbus was seeking for when he accidentally stumbled upon the Americas instead. Their spices, found nowhere else in the world at the time, made the islands of Indonesia some of the most valuable and economically important locations in the world.
All food has
control,
chili here,
and pulled in
basically.
the attention of numerous European empires
Warang
who each
Tagore?
fought bitterly with the others
Street
over their
food?
domination.
Everybody
One of
eats
the
street food
smallest
here.
of these spice islands was so immensely valuable at the time, it was even traded for the island of Manhattan in New York City back in 1667. At the crossroads of China and the United States in the 21st century, Indonesia's strategic importance will only continue to grow with time. And these islands' rich and fascinating history is told brilliantly in a brief history of Indonesia,
biggest Buddhist temple in the world,
and tsunamis,
and it's on a
the
Muslim
incredible
island.
story of Southeast Asia's largest nation. I listened to the story on Audible and found it to be incredibly captivating and engaging.
Since
you just finished watching an entire video about Indonesia, I'd highly encourage you to give it a listen as well in order to gain more global context.
It is just
especially considering that my deal with Audible will allow you to listen to it for free.
You have a great deal with Audible.
Audible
well
is
done.
the
I don't have a deal with
for
Audible.
audio entertainment. They've got audiobooks, podcasts.
Nice, but Java, in fact, Indonesia itself is just the most incredible place to visit. I highly recommend. Everybody goes to Bali, but there's so much more to Indonesia than Bali. Just Google top 10 places in Indonesia or top 20 places and see around Indonesia. I recommend coming here. As I say, I've lived here nearly a decade. So I hope you enjoyed the video and my commentary. And I hope to see you soon.